Okay, so we're back for number 2. So, as you can see, this is exactly where we left off. As simple recap, we have the big issues, we have a lot of strong justifications, we have a tremendous amount of little justifications, and they're all adding together, adding up, adding up, adding up. And you're probably thinking that doesn't seem so bad, does it? That's not so bad. We got the fear is gone, everything is working good, right? Except that there's a catch. The thing is that every single solitary little green strand we see, there's a reason I chose the color green. And for the Americans among us, that would be because it's the color of money. And like everything else, there's a cost. Sorry folks, nothing in the universe comes for free. Each and every single last solitary one of those green things costs us energy. It costs us resources. It's something we have to pay for one way or another. So, as an example, let's assume that we have $100, and everything that's there we have to pay for. Now, if we say those big pillars, say they're $2.50 a piece, well, there's $10 right off the bat. And of course, all the big justifications and the little justifications, they all have to get paid for too, right? So, as just a rough estimate, say that we have to pay $60 out of our $100 to pay for all of that, right? That doesn't seem so bad, does it? $60 out of 100, that still leaves us 40, right? Except that, well, like everything else, those justifications aren't enough. Because even though we've gotten rid of the fear, there's still the fear that it could come back. So, of course, the mind being the industrious little worker that it is, it starts adding more justifications. And it starts piling them on, more and more and more, trying to desperately make sure that at no point will the fear ever be able to knock it down. That if something real happens, the structure will survive, no matter what. So, if at this point we assume that all these new structures and all these new issues, that say takes us up to say $80 out of our 100, now of course we're paying more. But it's still not enough, because there's still that fear. No matter what we do, there's that fear of the unknown. There's that fear of what if that's still looming. There's this, what if something happens? What if this happens? What if that happens? Blah, 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 blah. And so, of course, the structure gets even more reinforced. So, of course, by this time, as you can clearly see, it's getting pretty thick, right? Well, if we're spending money, think of it like now we've spent everything we've got. We've spent our entire $100 on just defending what's already there. So that doesn't leave us anything for anything else, does it? There's no money for the movies or to go out for dinner or to have any fun. It's all absolutely geared to just defending on a fear of what if. Not even a real fear, not even a true rational fear, but just pure, unadulterated what if fear in its most pure and basic form. But of course, the mind and the body can't have that because it needs that. There needs to be money to go to the movies and everything else, so something else starts to happen. By this time, the mind, of course, has realized that, those really strong issues, they're actually pretty strong. Even with all the reinforcements, that perhaps maybe it's time to get rid of some of the justifications and reinforce them with issues. And of course, the issues, like a mold or a fungus, if you will, it starts taking over. It starts creeping in and starts overriding some of our other thoughts and emotions and feelings and mindsets. And we end up with this thing that's even more complicated. And, of course, the mind, being the efficient little worker that it is, starts to realize that, these issues, they're actually less costly. They don't require as much attention. Of course, they require just as much resources, they require just as much energy, but now there's less of them, so it's easier. So, of course, the issues spread. And just like the mold or fungus, they start taking over even more. until such time as we become more issue than anything else. The issue actually becoming the primary defining mode of our thought process. It becomes the backbone of every last thing we are. We effectively stop being human and become basically one big living, breathing, walking issue. And of course, as you can see from our pictorial model, that's not really very nice, is it? All of our really great colorful thoughts and ideas, they get overwritten by the green blob. And of course, we lose out because of it. However, we at this point have two choices. We can choose to continue and let the issues rule and ruin our lives, or we can do something else. We have another choice. This other choice, of course, is to let the fear win, if you will. The whole point of all of this fear and all of this reinforcement is that we were afraid our whole world was going to crumble. Well, option 2 is to let it crumble. Now, take a moment to look at our crumbled pile of ideas and thoughts and colorful thinking patterns, and you'll notice something quite interesting right off the bat. Have a look. See if you can find anything in the pile that's the color green. Of course, you won't be able to, because when we let it all crumble, when we let it all fall apart, all those issues, all those justifications, and in truth, all the fear of what if, simply go away. They evaporate because they're no longer needed. Yes, of course, what we perceive is that everything is in ruins, but the important element is that there's no more of that stuff sapping our life, draining us of our funds, of our resources. And that opens up a whole new realm of opportunity. That opens up new doors that we would not have been able to have any other way. At this point, what we get to do is we can stop, pick ourselves up, notice here by the pictorial model, and start rebuilding. Now, as you can see by our little model, you'll notice that in the beginning, we were creating this thing that effectively looked like a reverse pyramid. There was one point touching the ground. Well, in our option to rebuild, it's us that determines what happens, not circumstance, not other people, not our parents, nobody. It's us. And we get to rebuild in a more stable way. Not only do we get to rebuild in this stable fashion, we get to continue to add to that stable fashion. As we continue our process of putting pieces back together, it gets bigger. And of course, it gets more. More things get added. It becomes better and stronger. And again, we have a tremendously solid foundation from which to grow and evolve from. And of course, as we're in the process of growing and evolving and putting our pieces back together, we're going to learn new things as we go. Represented here by our pictorial model as new purple colored blocks. And as you can see, they just get added in. They're just incorporated right along with all the rest, and we continue to build ourselves up to become better and stronger and more capable. However, you'll notice as we continue to build even more, it starts jutting out the sides, just like the reverse pyramid again. We just have a much more stable platform. That's important because that's what's going to happen. A lot of our ideas are going to continue to build sort of the way they were. We have a greater level of control. We can take the time to put the pieces in perspective a little better, but some of it is going to still happen the same way. It's still going to just piece together as it's always done, because that's the basic process of the mind. There's nothing we can do to stop that. And speaking of stopping, because we're out of time for this section, we'll stop at this clip. And of course, we'll continue on again in segment number 3.